With Miami's schedule, they should take a Sunday or perhaps Saturday stroll back into the playoff.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Is the Kentucky hype real? Or is it overblown in Will Stein's first year? And SMU's schedule, can they contend for an ACC title? That's all coming up on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Have your cake and drink it too. Birthday cake flavor is back. No fork needed. Vanilla cakey flavor, caffeinated kick, and no sugar. It's party time. Order now at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. And guess what? Alex Dono is the definition of party time. Host of Locked On Canes, joining me on the show. I feel like you are the wildest, craziest partier I've ever seen, Dono.
You know me so well.
I do. I take an unruly amount of pride in that. Let's talk this Miami schedule here, because I'm trying to find a way, looking at the teams on the docket for Mario Cristobal. I'm trying to figure out how, barring Darian Mensah going down with an injury, they aren't rolling back into the playoff. Like, this might be one of the most playoff-safe schedules in the entire country for a team that just brought in its, $5, $6, $7, $8, $12 million quarterback. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But you got the quarterback you're looking for. You bring back almost your entire secondary. You're going to be super talented despite losses in the trenches. Is there any way you could see Miami missing the playoff?
I mean, it would take a complete implosion. Or, like you mentioned, I don't even want to say those words out loud because I'm so superstitious, but it would take a significant injury to an unspecified player, or it would just take a complete implosion. This is on paper, this is the easiest schedule Miami has had in years. But like the quality of the team that Miami is fielding in 2026, it looks like they should be able to avoid some of the landmines the teams in years past have stepped on. And part of the reason, Spencer, why this schedule is as easy on paper as it is, it has to do with, the SEC and the ACC moving to the 9-game conference schedule, because had that change not been made, Miami was set to start a home-and-home against South Carolina, which would have been a pretty significant non-conference game. But when the SEC and the ACC moved to a 9-game conference schedule, South Carolina and Miami agreed to take each other off of the schedule for those reasons. So they replaced South Carolina with Central Michigan, which you would think would be a significantly easier game.
The Chippewas.
Yeah, the mighty Chippewas come to town. And then I actually, the timing of the schedule in certain ways works out pretty well, Spencer, because, Miami opens up the season at Stanford, which is, at first notice, it seems kind of weird, a team that had a really successful season. The ACC makes them go out to Stanford, but they would have had to go out there anyway. Doing it week 1, to me, makes the schedule significantly easier because you take your longest road trip of the season, first week of the year, when your team is completely healthy, nobody's banged up, you go right out to Stanford, because if that game was like week 6 or 7, it could be a trap game, right? If you were playing against Stanford on the road the week before you play Clemson or Florida State or Notre Dame, which is the toughest game on Miami's schedule, then that could be a trap game. But week 1, it can't be a trap game. And so, if you go through the 12-game regular season schedule for Miami, if you were to, handicap all of these games, and there may be odds for each of them out on FanDuel somewhere, but the only game you would say Miami would be an underdog in would be on the road in South Bend on November 7th at Notre Dame. For all the other games, Miami would be a favorite, and in some games a significant favorite on paper for the other 11.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Last time the Hurricanes went to the Bay Area, trailed by, 21 points? 25. Yeah, 25 points at Cal, and Cam Ward orchestrated one of those magical comebacks that he became known for. But I'm with you that having Stanford there does make it easier. This is, for a lot of college football fans, the average college football fan, this is a 1-game schedule. For knowledgeable college football fans, this is a 2-game schedule. And what I mean by that is the number of games that have true national interest, there's a pair of them. It's Notre Dame, as you mentioned, the return trip, the playoff debate last year, all of that. It's one of the best non-conference games in the country. And for my everydayers out there, it is the reason I am not dogging on Miami and South Carolina for canceling their series together, because Miami has got Notre Dame. So if you've got Notre Dame and 9 conference opponents, I'm good. You have met my requirements for what a college football schedule should look like. But the other game, if you know ball just a little bit, if you're a real college football fan, is the following week in Coral Gables, Hard Rock Stadium, and the Duke Blue Devils come to town, and for the second straight year, Darian Mensah will play the team that he just bolted for more money. And it's glorious. It is grand and glorious, and we should bask in the wonderful nature of, one of the least popular parts of college football here. So if it were in Durham, it'd be even more fun, but that wouldn't be very fair for Miami to play 3 straight games on the road at that point in the schedule. But just looking at the rest of it, I'm with you, Don. I think they're favored in 11 games here. And by the way, Duke is probably not going to be as good of a football team next year without Mensah at quarterback, who saved them and guided them, of course, to an ACC championship with 5 losses, admittedly. But you know what? Good for them. I think Miami is going to have a win total when FanDuel releases them of at least 10.5. I don't know if they hand out 11.5 win totals.
I don't think they do.
I don't think they do. But you can write in pen, not erasable pen, just pen. You can pen in Miami for a 10.5 win total when it comes out on FanDuel.
Well, and let me add an extra spicy wrinkle to the Duke game that your everydayers may not have known. That's going to be Miami's homecoming game. That's another one. Yeah. So the Blue Devils come down likely with Walker Eget as their quarterback to take on their former pal Darian Mensah. It's going to be really, really interesting. And yeah, listen, I'm also the host of Locked On ACC. I don't know what to expect from Duke this year, but with them losing both Mensah and Cooper Barkate, their top receiver, to Miami, that seems to, swing some of their buzz away from them and even more onto Miami. So I don't know how tough of a game that's going to be, but it's going to be an emotional one for Duke and for Mensah. That's for sure. And then, Spencer, the other part of Miami's schedule that I think breaks out really fortunately is their final 3 games are all at home. Never seen that before on a Miami schedule. Now, it was a little strange last year. Their final 2 games were on the road, which was a little annoying because senior day was like so early. It was like early November was senior day against NC State, and they had to play on the road against Virginia Tech and Pitt to end the year. But then the ACC kind of course corrected by giving them 3 straight home games. One of those is the Duke game, then home against Virginia Tech and home against Boston College. So the schedule breaks out really favorably for Miami. Yeah, Vatech will be interesting with James Franklin there.
That's a mystery team.
Yeah, it is.
It's interesting because of that whole situation. In the ACC, if you ask me my top mystery team, I'd say Vatech.
Yeah.
And in the Big Ten, it's Penn State. Yeah. Like, I know you've got Rocco Becht, but are you good enough to go in the Big Ten? Iowa State was a good team in the Big 12. A bunch of those guys are now in Happy Valley. Are they? I could see Penn State winning anywhere from 4 to 10 games next year. You could sell me on any of those numbers. And Virginia Tech, kind of the same thing. I think Ethan Grunkmeyer's pretty good. I think the guys they bring down have got enough talent. Does it all come together right away? Again, you could sell me on anywhere from probably 5 to 10 wins for Virginia Tech. That's probably the other game that that folks would tune into. And by the way,
the thing with Virginia Tech, real quick, that I noticed, because Kenton Gibbs and I on Locked On ACC went over their schedules recently. They've got a really tough schedule because they have to play, of course, at Miami. Mm-hmm. They also play at SMU, at Clemson, and at Cal against JKS, and that's probably going to be like a 10:30 p.m. game. So they have maybe the toughest schedule in the ACC, Virginia Tech, so that is something that could work against them this year. They have to play a lot of the best teams in the ACC on the road.
Tough times for James Franklin. If only it had worked out at his previous stop, but it could work out at this one. We will just have to wait and see. Alex Donald, Locked On Canes, great as always. Speaking of mystery teams, do we know that Kentucky is just destined to be Kentucky, or is this transfer portal class actually worth considering? We shall debate that coming up next.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Dawn Staley and South Carolina remain on top of the SEC standings after handing Tennessee their worst defeat in program history with a final score of 93-40. In the 43-point win, South Carolina shot 69% from the field. Tessa Johnson had a perfect shooting night, scoring 24 points, shooting 4 for 4 from the floor, including 2 threes, and made all 4 of her free throws. And UCLA remains undefeated in Big Ten play, topping Michigan 69-66 as Player of the Year contender Lauren Betts put up a double-double, scoring 16 points, collecting 16 rebounds, and adding 5 assists and 3 blocks. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
This episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. The flights, the tickets, the whole experience. If you're looking at the NBA standings and saying, I know, meaning you know, of course, how it's playing out, who's winning the East, who's breaking through over in the West, who's going to win the NBA Finals, that's the sort of futures bet you want to get on over at FanDuel. And now, not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals in person. That is an experience you want to get on. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Do we buy into Kentucky, or are they just going to keep on being Kentucky? Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC is here. Will Stein takes over for Mark Stoops, and about as hot of a start as any of us could have expected. They haven't had a single spring practice yet, Gordy, but there has been a transfer portal window, and the Kentucky Wildcats, according to 24/7 Sports, have got the number 11 transfer portal class in the country. Just off the top, how surprising is that to you?
Yeah, I mean, it shows that they did their work and that there's a little youthful exuberance here with bringing in a Will Stein. I always say this about like the young up-and-coming coordinator is when you're a school like Kentucky, if this guy's awesome, he's not going to be there long. But the other side of that is if he's not awesome, he could be there a long time and put you mediocre. You know what I mean? So I'm always of the opinion, go catch a rising star. I had a buddy who covered the Houston Cougars years ago, and when Kevin Sumlin was there, he's like, man, he's not going to be here long. But he had great success. And then Tom Herman was there, and he had great success and jumped to Texas. So, you know, if you're a school like Kentucky, you got to understand where you are. I think Mark Stoops, where he was at his age, when he was having success there, it's like he's not going to leave here. But even still, the rumors of A&M coming after him came up. And then he kind of hit rock bottom again, and it was like, all right, we need to just kind of turn the page here. So I think most Kentucky fans understand you're getting the young, youthful exuberance of a Will Stein, who's a Kentucky kid. Yes, he went to Louisville, but like family and friends that are Kentucky fans and all this. So like he's got enough roots in that state, in that area to make this work. But again, if he's successful, he'll be there 2 years and then jump into the next big thing. But I think if you're Kentucky, you got to be fine with that.
I think there's a stronger chance in today's era because of how the playing field has leveled itself out that he would stay long term, given that he grew up going to games there. There's a Clark Lee element to it, where if he has a lot of success building up a non-traditional football power that is usually elite in another sport, for Kentucky, obviously it's basketball, for Vanderbilt, it's baseball, and all of a sudden they're having a lot of success, his name will get mentioned. Clark Lee was mentioned for Penn State. Clark Lee was mentioned for the Michigan job. He's still at Vanderbilt, though, because he's an alum and he's got the tie. So I think there's a solid chance that if he has success, he does indeed stick around. It's definitely worth monitoring for sure. Now, as an Oregon guy who's covered Will Stein, and Oregon fans, at least online, have their own opinions of Will Stein as a play caller over the last several years. One thing that I have always noted is he's an underrated recruiter. Because Dan Lanning's a defensive guy and Stein was his OC, people always looked at what he did play calling wise and primarily judged him through that lens. But the line of offensive recruits and quarterbacks he brought through Eugene was really impressive over the years. But I still didn't see this coming. Gordy, the guys that they have brought in, including, got to shout out my guy Shane Carr from Southern Utah, who's an awesome guy, and I covered this past year with the Thunderbirds. But they're going out and getting Trey Wisner, or CJ Baxter, rather, from Texas at running back, Lance Hurd from Tennessee. They get Kenny Minchey to say, nah, I'm good with Nebraska. Let me go to Kentucky, which of the two programs on paper, I'd rather be at Nebraska right now. Gordy, and for them to make those high-profile flips amongst many others, I think speaks volumes about their ability to navigate the portal. They've set a very high standard here, but also that people are clearly buying into what they're selling. And if that's literal money sometimes, well, you need that too.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, money talks. They certainly had a big influx of money from donors, boosters, on top of the revenue share. I mean, look, they're going to take a little bit of a bigger of a pie towards the basketball team. There's no doubt, but they made a commitment to the football program, and kudos to Mark Stoops doing them a solid. He did not have to, make it where he didn't have to get his buyout all at once. His contract called to have his buyout paid, whatever it was, first 30, 60 days of his firing. He said, you know what, it'll be nice. You guys can spread this out over time. They're like, cool, we'll do that. So here's a little money for Mark Stoops, and then here's a bunch of money for our football team this year. So that's kind of how they allocated this thing. But yeah, I mean, Lance Hurd was a guy who started at LSU, was a 5-star offensive tackle, went to Tennessee, was very good there, and said, you know what? Tennessee's not going to pay me more. I'll go get more elsewhere. Kentucky said, here's the money. So that's kind of how this team worked. I keep telling people, this year in college football, particularly a lot of the SEC teams, it's called buy a program year. Like, you're going to have to go buy a program when you go to the spring game or the first game of the season and going, who's number 7 again? Who's 24? Like, it's a whole new team that you got to get acclimated with and get to know. But it's a hodgepodge of talent. Yeah, you get Kenny Minchey, your quarterback from Notre Dame. You get your starting running back, CJ Baxter from Texas. Wide receiver, Nick Anderson from LSU. I mean, it's just like, it's guys from all over the country. And to me, it's all about the big C word, chemistry. How quickly does it all click? If it takes some time, kind of like LSU last year, if you look at how they had the top portal class, but it took time for them to get going. You go back 2 years ago when Lane Kiffin was at Ole Miss, they had one of the top portal classes. It all clicked pretty quickly for them. Those guys settled in very quickly. So it all kind of depends on the coaching style and, like we said, how quickly guys can settle into their roles. But what I do like for Jay Bateman and the defense for Kentucky is a lot of those guys are regulars that are back. Maybe guys that didn't start last year, but guys who played a lot and got a lot of playing time. So I think you've got a root of a foundation there with the defense. And by the way, Jay Bateman at A&M, their defense has been pretty solid. So I think that was a big get to get him. To me, it's all about the offense. And Joe Sloan, who, it's all in how you look at Sloan. A couple years ago, yes, he was the quarterback's coach with Jaden Daniels. And yes, he was the coach that had Bryce Underwood almost on the dotted line to come to LSU. But I could also look at it and say, yeah, Joe Sloan was also the architect of a really atrocious offense at LSU and got fired midseason. So It's all how you look at it, but he's got some pieces to work with there. And again, I'm not so much worried about Joe Sloan in the offense because I know Will Stein's going to have a heavy hand in the offense and the great success he had there at Oregon. So, yeah, man, it's one of those things where, like, when people are asking, hey, what's the win total for Kentucky this year? I'm like, dude, it could be 8-4, 7-5. It could be 5-7, 6-6. There's this whole like paradigm where you just don't know. We know the schedule's tough. It's always going to be tough playing an SEC schedule. Now going to a 9-game conference schedule and playing the season finale against Louisville like they always do, it's going to be tough. But yeah, we're going to have to wait to see it in action. I think Kenny Minchie is the big unknown. If he's really good, Kentucky's going to play spoiler and beat some people they're not supposed to.
Yeah, now they're playing a 9-game schedule and a rivalry Power 4 game, like everybody else in the country. Anyway, we don't need to dive into that rabbit hole at the moment. The schedule opens with Youngstown State, so 1-0 for the Will Stein era. Then it's Alabama at Texas A&M, South Alabama, at South Carolina, LSU, at Oklahoma, Vandy. Then it softens a bit, at Tennessee, Florida, and at Missouri before they play Louisville. I think a bowl game would be a great outcome for Will Stein. I think that would be a really strong first season. Maybe he's the Indiana of the SEC. Take a basketball school that's never won, bring over a big transfer portal class, and boom, you go win right away. Well, I have a sneaky suspicion it'll be tougher than that.
I'll just tell you this. I kind of like getting Alabama in week 2 because they're still going to be figuring out things on their own. They're going to have a new quarterback they're settling in, whether it's Austin Mack or Keelan Russell. And keep in mind, Kentucky, what was it, week 2 last year? They played Ole Miss tight because it was Ole Miss was still trying to figure things out with their new quarterback.
And beat Ole Miss the year before.
Yeah, so I think, look, would you rather play Alabama week 2 or in mid-November? I'll take them early and maybe kind of catch them working on some things. So, again, and if they pulled that off, my God, you talk about buy-in from the fan base. Oof. Kentucky fans will be lined up going, Will Stein, how much do you need? We'll right now.
Yeah, it's just trying to keep him there in Lexington. Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC. Great as always, my man. We pivot to the ACC, but we go down to the great state of Texas. A sleeper contender that you just can't overlook. First, this episode brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. Huge time saver for you. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Check out TurboTax at TurboTax.com/local. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which just might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take the top spot. 5 Hour Energy flavors have got something for everyone. And I'll tell you, I am a fruit guy myself. So, top pick on the board, the unquestioned Victor Wembanyama, Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence type selection, no doubt about it. No doubt. No question in my mind whatsoever. I'm going strawberry watermelon. That is a powerhouse flavor combination. Huge upside with the strawberry watermelon, very low downside. High floor, high ceiling sort of pick. And you want to know a sleeper that's under the radar? I'm a guy that loves a little sour. Sour apple is my number one sleeper of the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft. It's flying under the radar. It comes in very under-discussed relative to its potential. There are a bunch of other flavors that you'll like as well. Find your new favorite flavor of 5 Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Could one of the wackiest schedules in the ACC result in an ACC championship bid? We shall discuss with Grayson Singleton of Locked On SMU. The Mustangs, Grayson, I tell you what, 2 of your first 3 games are not just conference games, they're both on the road. And then after September 19th, SMU will play 1 true road game until November 21st. That is over 2 months of calendar time with 1 actual road game. The SEC seems to be the king of these weird schedules. Last year, Miami went by Florida State by 7 straight games to end the year. And now SMU gets this placed on their lap. Do you think this works in their favor?
In a way, it does. Okay, it's a double-edged sword with this schedule. Obviously, the month of October is absolutely outstanding. And then the one true road game you play is against Syracuse, which we don't know how good Syracuse is going to be next year. So that whole stretch from September 26th all the way to the end of October is very manageable. The caveat to that is that SMU is going to have to be buttoned up very, very early. And this is where college football not having a preseason could potentially work against you, because you have 2 conference games in your first 3. By the way, Spencer, you also didn't mention this. Those first 3 games are within 12 days of each other as well. So you're going to open on the road at Florida State. Then you've got the UC Davis game, and then you're at Louisville, a team that a lot of people nationally are starting to think could be really good. So you're going to have to be buttoned up early. There's not going to be a lot of time to iron out any kind of kinks or anything, not any time to be able to smooth out any warts. You got to be able to hit the ground running. And that is going to be the chief concern going into the season for SMU, or the chief question, let me phrase it that way, going into the season for SMU, is that can they get prepared all through fall camp to be ready to hit the ground running with very little margin for error in the first couple of weeks? You take care of business there, that month of October as a reward is pretty solid for SMU.
Yeah, Boston College at home, by Virginia at home, Cal at home, at Syracuse is the month of October. I mean, man, I don't know if it gets a lot better than that. There's no Clemson on this schedule. There's no Miami on this schedule. Not that that's a problem for SMU, of course. Who struggles to beat Miami? You know, I mean,
I'm fit to say before Indiana beat them, SMU was the last team to beat Miami last season.
Yeah, and it's not as if they went through some chumps between that time. But I just look at the lineup they have, and Virginia's got to pull back from what they were last year. They were such a great story. Tony Elliott did an incredible job. I'm sure they can be capable. I don't think they're going to go back to being a 10-win team once again. I just don't have that much faith in them. You got Virginia Tech and Wake Forest on there at the end of this run of mostly home games for SMU. Wake Forest was a great story last year. Virginia Tech is kind of a mystery team going into the season. I look at this schedule just in the ACC, ignoring the Notre Dame matchup on November 21st in South Bend. I don't think anybody expects SMU to win that game. If they do, well, then we're full steam ahead on a lot of things there with the Pony Express. But I look at the rest of these games, Grayson. I don't think there's a single matchup where I feel like SMU is going to be decidedly or even barely outmatched on paper.
If the Mustangs get through the Louisville game 3-0, I'll make the bold prediction here. They will be undefeated going into South Bend. I just look at this schedule and look at between September 19th at Louisville and November the 21st at Notre Dame, and I absolutely agree with you. I don't think there's a team on this schedule between those 2 games that is better than SMU. I look at Missouri State. Obviously, that's going to be a nice homecoming for Casey Woods, the former SMU offensive coordinator who took the Missouri State head coaching job. But the Bears are not better than SMU. Neither is Boston College, Virginia, Cal, or Syracuse. And probably not Virginia Tech or Wake Forest, even though the Mustangs lost to Wake Forest last year. So I don't want to get too cocky here, because Rhett Lashlee teams have found a way, even though they've risen to the occasion on some levels, they have also played beneath their standard in some games as well. So I don't want to get too cocky here, but The way the schedule lines up, especially with the bye in between those October games and the fact that you're not leaving Dallas, if they can get out of Louisville, Kentucky, 3-0, SMU will be undefeated by the time the Mustangs head to South Bend to take on Notre Dame.
I don't think it's the most scorching hot take that has ever graced this particular show. I think there is still an if in there because the first 3 games include at Florida State and at Louisville. And I kind of feel the same about both. You know, Lincoln Keenel's going from Ohio State down to Louisville with Jeff Brom. Good place to go if you're a young quarterback is be with Jeff Brom. Florida State, you got Mike Norvell calling plays. I feel like they're either going to pop or implode. I don't know if there's a lot of in between like they were last year.
Real talk.
Yeah, I just look at what Florida State has been. It's just they improved last year. They were better. I don't know. It feels weird. Gus Malzahn leaving, I think, is telling about what he thinks there. But let me throw a game that is, I think, easily overlooked, but really shouldn't be, and is I haven't officially dubbed anyone my dark horse contender. Last year, I'll just throw out my dark horse ACC contenders were Duke and Georgia Tech. Not bad. Not bad. Just get to my own horn a little.
You did.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Can I interest you all in getting a little bit excited about the California Golden Bears? If you look at the lineup of ACC quarterbacks SMU is going to face on this schedule that can either decidedly go toe-to-toe with or be better than Kevin Jennings, I don't think there are that many names on the list. Just in the ACC slate, I think it's kind of JKS and maybe on a good day, Ethan Grunkemeyer at Virginia Tech. Maybe on a good day, Steve Angeli at Syracuse. But I'm taking Kevin Jennings over those guys. But I am a JKS stan. It's it's not an all the way cross country trip, but every road game in the ACC is a long trip for when it involves Cal, SMU, or Stanford. But that Cal game is the home matchup that if I'm an SMU fan, I'm circling saying, hey, I know they got a first-year head coach, but they weren't a disaster last year. You got a returning quarterback. They have portaled very well. Tosh Lupoy's coming off of a lot of winning years with Dan Lanning at Oregon. I think Cal could be a good team this year in the ACC.
I think Cal can be a good team this year in the ACC, and I believe JKS is the real deal. I'm right there with you. And JKS last season in Cal's 38-35 win over SMU, which knocks SMU out of ACC title contention, he carved up SMU in that game. So I am right with you 100%. If there is going to be an ACC quarterback that is better than Kevin Jennings this year, it will be JKS, no doubt about it. And SMU is going to have to face him without last year's defensive coordinator, the nationwide renowned Scott Simons, who took the inside linebacker's job with the Dallas Cowboys. So they're going to have to retool their defensive play calling, and against a quarterback who ate them up last year and is looking to do the same again this year. I 100% agree.
Can SMU beat Notre Dame in South Bend this year?
As it stands right now, no.
That was a long pause.
As it stands right now, no. Yeah. They would have to surprise me in a lot of ways to be able to do that. Here's the kicker, though, Spencer. Do they need to beat them?
No.
Hear me out now. Hear me out now. If they get through that Louisville game undefeated, I think they're going undefeated until they get to Notre Dame. Say they lose to Notre Dame. Their last game of the regular season is against Stanford. They win that game, they are unbeaten in ACC play. They're going to the ACC championship game. And regardless of what happens in that game, I think they're in the college football playoff, if that happens. So really what you want to see from SMU in that game at South Bend, unless they're just infinitely better than I think they will be, play them close. Make it a 20-13 game. Be respectable in that game. So that way there's no margin for people that are going to want to nitpick and say, oh, well, SMU's just good because they're a product of their schedule, which It's not the greatest schedule in the world. I will readily admit that. It's not the most daunting. But if you can hang with Notre Dame and earn that respect and get to the ACC championship game, SMU's no doubt in the college football playoff if that is to occur.
I'm with you there, pending the Notre Dame outcome, just because I watched BYU roll through a schedule, beat everybody, couple close games. Mostly they cruised. They played Texas Tech, who everybody thought correctly was the best team in the conference, and they got manhandled a little bit. And then they played them again, and they got manhandled. But I just bring that up to say, even though there were 2 games there, and SMU won of 2 games against Notre Dame in the 2026 season, barring a rematch in the playoffs somehow, the committee will hold it against you if they say, we don't really care about the 11 wins you have. That's not how I would operate. That's not what I'm about. I'm just going on what the committee did last year, which is they took that spot away from BYU because they said you played one legit team and you got beat badly. So I'm with you. 11-1, play Notre Dame close, and you're in the playoff.
But here's the thing. Here's the difference in my hypothetical scenario between SMU and last season's BYU. SMU would be undefeated in their conference play if that was to happen. BYU was not undefeated during the regular season Big 12 schedule.
That's true. But both would make the conference championship game. Because BYU did last year. SMU obviously would. 10-2 SMU probably in the ACC championship game. And now with the new rules, the 4 power conferences automatically get their champions in. That's not a rule I care for. Duke would have made the playoff last year with 5 losses, but you know what? I'm not making the rules here. On this show, I kind of am, which is why we bring on Grayson Singleton, Locked On SMU. Appreciate the time, my man. I appreciate everyone listening. See you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.